strong understanding of the rights that exist, and just everybody kind of understanding who they are and what type of rights exist in the music that they create. So the reason I say that is for the longest time, most people kind of just acknowledged only a certain part of the copyright when it related to music. So they would talk about the master rights, and it was always the artist and music, the artist and music. But what we're seeing now is a lot more people realizing that even though I'm the artist that sang the song, I'm also a songwriter, or I'm also a songwriter and a producer. So people are kind of understanding their music composition rights and what they are entitled to as a result of that. The landscape generally, I would say, for example, in Nigeria, there's been, a review or conversations around the review of the copyright law, which is something that we've been trying to get across the line for time. And the last sort of feedback that I got is that it's been approved by both houses, and they're just trying to kind of, formalize it and make it law for Nigeria. So that's exciting that the copyright law is being reviewed. I think it's about time. But what we're now kind of struggling with or challenging is more of like, how do we protect the rights in the publishing area, which is where you have a lot of collection management organizations involved. What are the rights there, and how can we provide a system that better supports those rights? So in my general overview, that's what it is for Nigeria. I think a few other countries in Africa are also kind of challenging a lot of the copyright laws. A lot of them are archaic, especially with the development of technology and the use of the rapid growth of digitization of music. So just making sure that we're not kind of missing out on what's going on at the global level, but also making sure that the people that are supposed to be getting money from it are properly attributed, and that there's proper conversation across the countries to make sure that funds are sort of sent back and forth as they should, in terms of just collections and the proper representation of the rights, especially again for the collection management side of things. So that's my general summary of the music business perspective.
Thank you very much, Aibee. Even though I had to struggle to really hear what you're really saying, but I'm sure that some persons were able to get nitbits into what you have said. So I think over to you, Mayenkeze. Just a brief overview of what IP is to you in Africa. Thank you.
Thanks, Molabage. I think I come from a film and television business. Basically, I've always believed, we never run out of ideas in the continent. We continually create stories. We have stories we want to tell, and that's where it comes from. The biggest, of course, always the biggest challenge is, how do you monetize your intellectual property? And because you could have IP, but what are you going to do with it? What's the use of creating something, but you don't know what to do with it? So I think that has been the biggest challenge. From a South African perspective, we do have, of course, copyright law, which has gone through now a new revision. I know there were, different forces pulling different ways, because I think it's either the performers versus the creators, the producers, and the publishers. They all have a different way of what they think should be their compensation. So, and I think South Africa, in a way, because it's got the copyright laws, but again, it's been subjected to how do we monetize, our IP. The continent has always been a challenge, because not many countries have laws in place that protects the IP creator, or that can help copyright your intellectual property. I'm in the distribution and financing space. Oftentimes it's always a contractual challenge, is, to at what point and what is deemed the right, let's put it, the right compensation for what the creator creates. The opportunities, of course, for the continent are there, with many global platforms, even local players now recognizing the intellectual property being created in the continent and being exploited globally. So there's a massive opportunity now where we can really start taking ourselves seriously, where we put, I guess, certain measures in place and certain laws to protect what we create. And also it sort of informs what should be the value of what we create and how we exploit it. So I do think there's the creative economy from the film and television or the audiovisual sector is booming, is on a growth trajectory. And if you look, just all streamers, they want, or globally, almost every platform wants the African stories. They wanna tell that authentic, or they wanna tell interesting stories. I think for a long time, we've been subjected to global stories because we're dictated and told what we should watch, what we should be creating. But now the opportunities for us. So the issue is like, how do we then create value for our interest, and how do we protect it, and how do we monetize it? So I think there's a greater conversation just for the continent. The difficult, of course, with the continent, we have many languages that seem to divide us in terms of how we can collaborate or create even better structures. So if we could bridge that gap of language, which informs culture, and we could find, I guess, our unique way of really deciding what should be the value of what we create, and how we all come together as a continent to monetize that intellectual property. The difficulty now has always been, we're still subjected to whoever comes with the bigger paycheck, and they said, I want that, I want all rights. And oftentimes the creators themselves don't even know what that IP is worth. So yeah, but there are definitely, I think, greater opportunities now, especially in the times in the times of the digital space. There are greater opportunities. So I'm very much excited about where, I guess, we're going as a continent, but I still warn and caution that we need to have stricter laws, to protect what we're creating.
Thank you very much. So over to you, Charles. Just highlight what is the IP, an overview of the IP landscape in Africa.
Thank you very much. Essentially, I come from the visual arts creative aspect, and especially dealing with how creatives in different industries and creators can monetize through making products. So what we do see in Africa is that from the consumer's perspective, if you as a creative are not enabling them to consume your physical products based on your intellectual property, they're resorting to sort of counterfeits or making things of their own by themselves or commercially. So sometimes the property rights, especially with the people who are able to produce, say, the printers, etc., they don't really have any cognizance of what IP is. So if you, for example, bring an image of your favorite Amapiano or Afrobeats artist to a printer and you have a t-shirt, they'll gladly print it for you. So the landscape means, people aren't really aware. They really want to show that they are part of a community or a tribe, especially within the creative economy. So it's cognizant on creators to make sure that they start paying attention to the opportunities there are and the platforms available for them to enable them to scale and access their audiences. It's especially apparent now since social media has blown up and e-commerce has blown up thanks to, in part, COVID. Your fans want to consume your intellectual property. So we've seen, obviously, COVID enabling e-commerce growth all over the continent. Now it's also about the trade agreements coming into play and seeing how that will happen. So my outlook is we're going to have to deal with counterfeit and bootleg sort of products in Africa until those trade agreements make it easy for producers in different countries to send their products quickly and cheaply to communities all over the country, all over the continent especially. So my overview is, yeah, there's still a lot of stakeholders who need to get the information about IP, more especially the creators themselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jermaine. I have a question for Ibukun, and I'm sure that you agree with me that it's a great time for the music industry in Africa. And then Ibukun, when we saw your profile, we know that you are knee deep in the music business, and then being somebody that's worked in the music business for a very long time. Could you please walk us through some of the untapped opportunities for IP in the music industry, like taking Africa as a case study? Hi, Ibukun, are you there? Hi, Ibukun. Okay, I think I'll just went question when she joins. When she's on the call, I'll ask her. But Charles, I don't know, as a founder working with creatives and as an experienced creative entrepreneur, what are some of the most common challenges that you have faced trying to monetize IP? You can cite case studies if you have any, but what are the salient challenges that you have faced trying to monetize intellectual property?
So from our perspective, with creating direct-to-consumer products for musicians and specifically musicians and visual artists, creatives, one of the common things we see is that most creatives don't have their IP in the correct format or suitable format for us to actually make products. I'll give you two case studies. For example, 2 years ago, we were working with a legendary musician who's going to be celebrating a milestone. I've been obviously performing for over 60 years. So he wanted to do a anniversary package of records, especially physical vinyls, along with some t-shirts and CDs as well. So only to find out that we don't have this particular album in any form that will enable us to reproduce vinyl records. So that's one example. Another example we had is where the audience of a particular musician really want merchandise from this artist, but they're not releasing merchandise. Another key example is, so specifically with artworks, is where a creator will work maybe with a graphic designer or visual artist to make an album cover or that sort of thing, or a logo, and then when it's time to reproduce in other formats, they don't have the correct format, which means it creates delays where we have to either recreate the designs from scratch or actually just shelve projects completely. So those are the cases that first come to mind, is that as a creator, you need to make sure that when you commission someone to produce your IP, whether it's in the format of music or in the format of some sort of visual or brand identity, that you always have the correct formats, that you brief them and tell them, I want to be able to use this for these platforms or for these formats. So making sure that you have copies available to you that you can use when you are ready to. And that also, you also have documented evidence that you have usage of those properties in those formats. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charles. I think I got some things there. I can see that people are already dropping their questions in the chat box. Please kindly do that. And when it's time for questions and answers, we'll definitely get back to them. For Mayenkeze, I have this question for you, and I don't know. And gladly, somebody had already dropped the question on AFC-CFTA. So it would be nice for you to probably provide insight to it. So what opportunities should African creative entrepreneurs look out for in the AFC-FTA protocol in regards to intellectual property rights? I'm sure the person who dropped a question related to something like this is really excited because they're touching point on it now. Did you get the question, or you want me to recap?
Just let me repeat. It's more of what after presents as an opportunity, you know, for, I guess, for creative economy in the continent. I guess that's your question, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I think there's a great spirit in the collaboration, right? I think throughout the continent, the creative sector is probably the most exciting one. We've always been collaborating. I think what potentially after will present is easy movement and easy trade. Now, in terms of the creative economy, or let's say come back to the film and television sector, right? That if we are to create films, movies, TV series between or amongst all the African states, and we are to collaborate, and this all needs movement, this all needs cross-border collaboration, custom clearance issues that we're having, movement of equipment, movement of crew, talent, visa issues. So these are all the challenges, I guess, we face from collaborating. You know, if you look at Hollywood, the reason they built studios was to just bring everyone in one space and create everything in a particular without having all these logistic issues. I think the similar situation in the continent. You know, in South Africa, we have studios where we can shoot here. There isn't many studios throughout the continent. So I do think we should more and more try and push this conversation with AFTA to say, you know, part of the trade agreement, part of the collaboration in order for us to trade properly, these are the things we need to look at. So I do think, you know, on top of my mind, I think of visa issues, movement, customs, these things can really be made easier by, you know, by this trade agreement. So I do think there's an opportunity, and there's a way to, you know, to fast track or to make things easier for us to collaborate. The one thing, of course, you can't take away story. We all, it is regardless of a trade agreement or whether it exists or not, we will always to be collaborate if there's a great story in Ghana or Cote d'Ivoire or Nigeria or South Africa. Creators will always make it work. So that can be a stumbling block, but I think having systems or these agreements could really make movement and logistics easier, and that is a big thing. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. I can see that questions are popping in. Please kindly rename your profile using button and let us know in the chat section if you have any issues, and we'll definitely respond to you. So I think I'll get back to Aibee. I don't know. Aibee, can you hear me now? And can you
Yes, I
speak
can.
now?
I'm hoping this is
Okay.
much better.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, like I was saying the other time, that I know that it's a great time for the music industry in Africa. And of course, for someone like you who has worked a while in the music business, can you just walk us through some of the untapped opportunities for IP monetization in the music industry, using Africa as a case study?
Right. I think the one that I can think of is still the most obvious that we've all been trying to solve for, which is, you know, how much or how developed is our publishing space. You know, one of the incentives for creating is that you're going to earn the economic value that comes with it. And every day you meet people that are songwriters, you meet people that are producers. And the truth is, you know, a creative would always create, because that's part of, you know, what makes them tick. It's part of what makes them alive. So they will do it. So I'm not one of those people that believes that, you know, one of the main incentives or purposes for protecting rights under copyright is to incentivize people to create. People will create regardless. But what we're saying is, how much are you leaving on the table? And I think until we're able to resolve the collective management conversations in a very holistic way, in Nigeria particularly, we will not earn as much as we can. And what's happening is that we are losing, you know, a lot of business to other territories where people sort of transfer their rights to neighboring countries, like most especially people go to South Africa. to kind of register with SAMRO and have them kind of manage their rights, because ideally what should happen is that everything comes through our local CMOs like MCSN and COSON. COSON, I know their license has been suspended, so there's the question around whether or not they can even function. So I think that's a very big value chain that we're not optimizing, and that's an untapped resource in my opinion, because most of our artists are also songwriters, and a lot of them even do three, right? They're artists, they're songwriters, and they're producers, and so that means they should be, earning more in that capacity. There's also the conversation around licensing, and I know a lot of people still do it, but even as a label, most of the requests that we have for licensing are for film and maybe for the bigger studios and international. So I think that there's still a big market here locally, but a lot of it would have to do with how are we registering the rights, how are we registering the songs, how many people even know who owns what song, and are we capturing the rights owners at the time of content creation. Also, if you see the way music is being used now, it's no longer people just listening to music to enjoy it. People are also using music as a utility. And I use that to say, for example, if people want to move their products on Instagram, they're looking for the right song that fits, that video as they're creating the content, right? So that's also another opportunity for people that may not be artists, but are songwriters and have the opportunity or have the ability to write music that fits for, different situations and fits different scenarios. I think that's definitely another area that we can develop as like just an industry, just people creating content and monetizing content for content, as opposed to monetizing just songs that are released through record labels or as independent artists. Also, there's label services. We already have companies that do this, which is essentially what they do is they provide people with services that a label would normally provide. So for example, I could narrow down my company to just distributing to DSPs, or I could say that, okay, instead of distributing, I also have budgets to support with marketing. So then I'm licensing the content for a particular period where I own part of the rights for a particular period. And I'm advancing, a particular sum to support this song that I think is amazing. We do have a few of them, like Mad Solutions. We have Azuri. These are people that distribute for independent artists and sometimes even collaborate with labels. But I think that there's room for more. There are other rights that need to be protected. Rise of independent management companies where people just sign artists to manage their brand as opposed to just the song. How many management companies do we have that are established and big and, have different talent that they're representing across the space? We also have, I think fans also desire to engage more at a very direct level with their fans. So how many direct to fan platforms do we have where people can present, pre-sale merchandise or pre-release exclusive content, things that kind of drive engagement with the talent, and like merch or just bundled deals of signed shirts. These are areas that I find that we can have more of. So it's not like they don't exist. It's just that at what volume are we doing them, and do people know that there's all these opportunities that also exist? You don't have to just be an artist to kind of be present in the music space. We also need help with creating platforms that help people collect music or track music, right? So that's then goes into technology. How are we optimizing on, tracking the music that we create locally and helping people, distribute money with royalty platforms and things like that. So I think these are just a few areas that I think we need more of, because what usually happens is that labels are struggling with like one or two people that are doing these things and they want more options. So I think there can definitely be more competition in the music space.
Thank you very, very much. That was really, really insightful, Aibee. And I think that's going to lead me to ask you questions regarding licenses. So I am Aibee. For licenses to use IP protected content are granted on territorial basis, right? And the licensed IP rights only existing at the level of domestic law. Can you just talk to us about how creators of intellectual property can monetize their content given the fact that licenses can be territorial?
So I think that actually gives you flexibility, the fact that it can be territorial. So you own the rights, but you can then say that I'm going to give one person that is strong in this territory this right, and then it's going to be protected under this particular law. And then you do another contract with another person in a completely different territory and say, because you're stronger in this market, I'm going to give you the right to monetize in this area. And it's going to be protected by this law. So while it's understandable that the existence of the right exists locally, we do have, international copyright treaties and conventions that help people protect the rights that exist in the songs. Granted, not all the countries are signed up to these treaties, and not all of them have been, actually adopted locally. But I think that there's still room for certain conversations. Obviously, if you're going to be dealing with people in a particular region, it's important that you do your research and try to find out, am I protected as a creator under this, this country's copyright law? And one of the things that I think usually they use to determine that is, what is the point of attachment? Like, where was the song first created? Sometimes the level of protection that you get in a particular country is largely dependent on some of the circumstances and facts that existed at the time the song was first, released or published or, put out in public. So I always say that territory contracts actually help you, because you can then put in the contract what law do you want to protect the song. But it's also important to understand the facts and circumstances around when the content was created and when it was released, and if the national laws by themselves also have specific provisions that would protect you in case there are issues around the use of the song.
Thank you very much, Aibee. And there's a question I'd like to ask all our panelists, and here it is. I understand that with the rise of streaming platforms like Netflix, YouTube, all manner that have emerged, and of course, COVID helped with streaming platforms, and seeing that it has increased increased penetration of creative outputs, and even reduced piracy to a very large degree. And even so, royalties from this are not as profitable, especially to African creators. I know that I've heard of several cases whereby the royalties they get, it's not as profitable as they would want it to be. Monetization is a serious issue, especially when it comes across streaming platforms. So how can African creatives leverage this platform while getting maximum value? Creators want to use their gifts. They want to be as creative as much as they can, but how can they be creative and at the same time giving their intellectual property and getting the maximum value that they think they deserve? And I think I want Mayenkeze to go first, judging from your experience operating the AAA entertainment platform.
Okay, no, thanks for that. I think Charles mentioned that, intellectual property is nothing if it's not monetized, right? Also, at the same time, we're not short of ideas, so we're always going to continue to create. It's going to come down to what the value of what you're creating is. In the film and television business, of course, almost every platform streamer has its own audience that it wants to satisfy, and it's always probably, especially the subscription-based one, it's all about subscription. They want to get as many subscribers, so they want to create the content that appeals to their subscribers. So I do think from our perspective, and in terms of what we create, with the opportunities that it presents, with all the streamers that are now in the continent. Originally, from a distribution perspective, we were always going out globally to find market for the content we create. Now we have many streamers that are here. It comes down to what is it that you create, what value of what you're creating is, and how you negotiate your value with each and every buyer that is out there. And there are plenty expectations from the creators and the IP owners, but at the same time, there is value that is being created by the streamers or say the platform themselves. So it goes back to, we must have parameters within the copyright laws that we put in terms of what rights we keep and what is deemed should be paid for. At the same time, it's going to come down to what you negotiate the value of your property is. Now, if you're creating shoes, no matter how thin your shoes, no matter how beautiful you think your shoes are, but no one is buying them, there's no value for those shoes. And that value, there is value because you've created it. But that value is much more valuable when there's people buying the shoes you create. So for me, it's the same thing in the creative sector. The value of IP is firstly in your mind, in the time you put in, but once it's being copyrighted, it's being created into a property that you could exploit, that's when it derives the value. So I do think there is, of course, opportunities to negotiate for the value of what you create. There is a hunger and the need for great stories from here to the audience. So I think, it's definitely going to come down to the protection of the law. At the same time, it's going to come down to what value you derive from what you create. And oftentimes that value is based on historical data and what maybe the platform wanted to pay and what they think and how many subscribers they have. So it's a negotiation thing at the end of the day. But as long as you protect your IP.
Thank you very much. I don't know if Charles wants to say anything in regards to what just probably buttress upon that Mayenkeze has said earlier.
Yes, basically 100% correct. The whole idea of owning and being aware of your intellectual property is to commercialize it. However, one thing African creators need to be aware of is that we need to really craft the licenses we want to create with other stakeholders to suit our markets and our needs. So, for example, if you get a licensing agreement, maybe let's just say for visual artists like Basquiat, it'll, they have very strict terms and conditions in terms of territory, etc. So you can use that as a basis for your own, but you also need to take a deep dive into your market and really assess the individuals in the African market, because as everyone knows, in marketing, your people are very important. So you need to know everything and as much as possible about the lifestyles of the people you aim to sell your products to. So it's very important that we, take an African approach and create an African solution for the way we look at the licensing and attracting and growing sort of our audiences and fans. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charles. Aibee, I have a question for you. I don't know if it's possible for you to walk participants on a general overview of processes to follow if they want to monetize their intellectual property.
Processes to follow if you want to monetize your intellectual property. I think, at least for music, once you create the music, your right is already established. There is conversation around registering, but I don't think registration is largely to prove ownership. There are other ways that you can prove ownership. I think it's largely just so that they can protect you if there's a case, and they have to figure out who was the first to create the song, because obviously ideas float around, right? So registration is sort of like a nice prima facie way of establishing that you're the owner. And I think, so that's the first thing, is just, okay, who's the owner? And then how do you monetize it? There's so many different ways you can monetize it. Like I said, for music, as an artist, you can monetize it by putting it on DSP platforms to sell. You can monetize it by putting it in movies and, other things that kind of like sync audio to to moving images. You can monetize it by licensing the song to a brand to use, like, for commercials. So all those are syncs. You can also monetize, for publishing, like I was saying. If you're also the person that wrote the song, there's another right that exists there. So instead of just monetizing the song, you're also monetizing the lyrics. So the fact that you have these lyrics, you can give it to somebody else to use those lyrics, and they create their own master, which is different from your original master. We can also talk about using the lyrics for merchandise, right? That's also another different stream in terms of monetizing that. You can do merch. You can do collaborations with people for that. It doesn't have to be something that you do yourself. People used to also do music notes, right? So there are platforms actually that exist now where people would license, the notes to your music to choirs and things like that if they want to perform it on stage for theater and the like. Those are not very common, but they still exist, right? So like print sheets and things like that. So those are different ways that I think you can monetize. I'm sure there are others. Like I'm losing it now, but I think the most important thing, first of all, is to understand what rights do I have within this piece of content, and what does the law provide me under these rights. You can even also, if you're not singing it, you can sell it to somebody else and say, okay, I'm going to give you my rights to this music for a particular period, which is what we're talking about with licensing. And in exchange for that, you give me money because I think you're in a better position to maximize and get, more return on investment on this piece of music, which sometimes, like, for example, with Love Wantinti, that's what we did. We licensed it to Warner, and Warner was able to, really amplify the song, and they could do it better than us at a global level. So that's also another way. So yeah, I think those are kind of a few ways that you can monetize your rights in music. I don't know if I answered that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Aibee. I know that we have honestly running out of time, but we're trying to maximize what we have left. I have a final questions for all the panelists before we open the floor for questions. And the question I would like to ask is, I know that it's a great time for the creative economy. The creative economy in Africa is building up, and a lot of interest is coming into space. So how can creators attract investors with their intellectual property, monetizing their intellectual property? I don't know, who likes to go first?
Can you repeat the question? How can creators attract investors?
Yes. By monetizing their intellectual property, using their intellectual property to attract investors.
Well, I think, intellectual property is value. So the first thing is understanding what is the value of your intellectual property. If people see that it's a valuable asset, they're definitely interested in working with it. So one of the first things is just what do you have, like, and how valuable is that asset, and how do you determine if it's valuable? For example, with music, you can determine the value of the song based on how much you're making on a monthly basis on the song, right? It gives you a general sort of prima, like, just on the face, what am I making every month? That's the value that I'm getting from this. And then if you look at all the other streams that are not being monetized or collected on, so performance rights, for example, or like, maybe it's played on radio, that's another revenue source that you can generate. There are all these other different streams of revenue that you get from just releasing a piece of music. That also adds to the valuation. I think the most important thing also for a lot of people investing is that, are you able to trace the owner? They need to make sure that there's a very strong, chain of title, so that they know that they're not being sued if they want to use the product, right? Obviously there are always indemnity clauses in a lot of these contracts, but you want to be able to establish that this is the chain of title, I'm the right owner, or if I'm not the right owner, I made sure that I purchased it out completely and I'm able to enter this type of agreement. Or if I didn't purchase this out completely, the rightful owner is also aligned with this, transfer of right or ownership or license, or whatever the case may be. So obviously firmly establishing your chain of title is very important. establishing the value of the asset that exists. And if it's a new one that hasn't been used or monetized yet, it's like, what have you done before? And what have you been able to generate based on the past, content that you created? That, I think, is also something that they can use to determine what the value of the asset will be. Your brand as well, in the market that they want to monetize it, what is the brand value? That does your name carry weight? That even if you've never released anything in so many years, if you announce that you want to release something, they would be, they would make a lot of money. That's also part of the things, like goodwill of the brand. That's part of the things that they also look into and try to explore before working with people that have these assets. Is there a lien on the asset? That means, are you owing somebody? And they've now said that this is what I'm going to use to recoup on my investment with you prior. So what are part of the contracts that you've entered into before? What are the ones that you're in now? And what is the relationship with the asset and those contracts? So those are just some of the few things that kind of have popped, the top of my head that I think would be important if somebody wants to invest. Also, financial records. How are you keeping your financial records? Do you know what your receivables are? Do you know what has gone into it? Is it actually profitable so that you can actually track the finances? Yeah, so those are some of the things.
Thank you very much, Aibee. Charles, I guess you want to say something.
Yes. First of all, you need to have sufficient intellectual property. So investors want to see that there is a substantial amount of intellectual property to invest in. So for example, with fashion brands, typically you need to plan 6 to 18 months ahead of time if you can. So having your designs ready, your mock-ups ready, that sort of thing. So having IP that's ready to go in time. Also developing, like Aibee said, having that for your financial records available to you. And that's why it's very important to register yourself as a company, so that you can separate your personal financial records from your company financial records. That's very important, so they can actually see, okay, you actually are generating money from your IP. Yeah, that's the main thing, is that if you have built a significant audience, for example, if you've built an email list of 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 customers or potential customers, that's one of the things you can do as well. Start generating, so you can always speak to investors before you get to a point, if you have access to them, to find out what are the key indicators for valuable IP. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I do not know if Mayenkeze has anything to add before we go to question time.
So yeah, I think in the film and television business, it always comes down to distribution as well as your market. It's for anyone putting money and investing in your IP, they need to know that they're going to get their money back, right? So there is, of course, an embedded, what's called this thing, I think within the creative sector, that says you have to give me money because I'm creating something. So how do you derive value to the IP? So it's based on, of course, like I said, historical data, that whatever you're creating has a proven record, that maybe the genre you're creating from a film and television has worked before. The book is famous and has already got a built-in audience, so you can always, that it's going to work when it's being created, whether into a TV series or into a movie. Investors really want return on investment, how much, what the value of what creating, what they're going to get back. So that's in simple terms. And that value is created by distribution, is understanding what properties of a similar nature, of a similar genre have done before. And then you can go to investor and say, okay, cool, I'm going to create this action film. And for this budget, it's going to make this much because these are the historical numbers. Also, as a creator, I've created something good, so your risks are mitigated. So that's how you attract, I guess, investment. There are passionate people who just want to invest in it. I don't know them, but I do think if you have great IP and you can quantify and you can value it, investors will always be there. It's just that how do you prove? And that's always been the issue. How do you prove the value of what you're going to create? And that's what we do, I guess, in distribution. We try to give value to it. So I do think that's probably in simple terms, the best way of attracting investment into your intellectual property within the film and television sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, our panelists. Really great time, an awesome conversation. Please, if you have any questions, please use the chat box and drop your questions, and we'll attend to them speedily. But while you're dropping your questions, let me see if I can access some who have dropped their questions earlier, and let's see if we can ask them. I know that this is coming from Adifemi. He's asking that, do you think there's a need for an African-centered web platform for creatives? He says that, I believe that as a creative designer, or African creative popular sites. So is there a need for an African-centered web platform for creatives? Aibee, do you mind to go on this question?
I think I'd need to know more about what is on the platform. The truth is that a lot of people are trying to enter Africa and they don't know where to start. So like, if you're able to provide a one place, one stop for people, I think that's always welcome in whatever capacity. I think it's just about figuring out what is the consistent value that you're bringing that's different, and how do you intend to scale?
Okay, thank you very much. I don't know if any other panelists wants to share insight to that question. Is there a need for an African web for African contents? Do we need that at this point in time?
Yeah, well, I think just from my perspective, we're battling with data, with access to data, right? In the continent as it stands, not many of us are lit, digitally. So I think there's always going to be a need for anything, specifically a platform, because it's always going to be who wants to create it, how it's created, by who. So I do think innovators will always exist. There's many platforms that exist already in the continent that services the African creatives. So if there's a need, they already exist. Whether they have a reach, it's going to come down to access to data, also expendable income, what's needed, So all it is for me, I think we have to continue to do good, regardless where our intellectual property sits. Is if you're creating the right story, the right product, it will find its audience globally. What the streamers have proven that the stuff we create, or as the market, same in music, the fact that the stuff we create has a global audience. Oftentimes we think we need to be creating something and compete with North America. Our stuff gets watched in Scandinavia, from the film and television business in China, in places where no one could think we have an audience. So I do think we just need to continue to seek where someone is willing to pay for what we create, not those who want to watch it for the sake of watching it. I think that for me is the key. So creating a web-centered platform, if you want to do it. But there's many that exist. So that's just my take.
Thank you very much. That was quite spot on. I do not know if you have any other questions that you'd like to ask. Please drop it in the chat box. I'm seeing some questions and I'm trying to rephrase. I don't know if you can help out. I'm trying to rephrase some of these questions because I really do not understand. Okay, somebody is here. Hi, my name is Beatrice. I run a women-led creative agency in Ghana, and I'm on the lookout for investors interested? Oh, okay, that's not a question. Apologies. I was thinking that was a question. Please kindly use the chat box to ask your questions. And if you do not want to use the chat box to ask your questions, you can just raise your hands up or just wave, and then you'll be unmuted to speak. Okay, more questions, please. I'm trying to scroll up to see if I can still find some questions in the chat box. If your question has not been answered, kindly copy and paste again so that we can, the panelists can provide answers to the questions. Okay, there's a question here that is, there's a contestation between art and culture for social interaction versus the economic benefit, that's monetization. How do we balance between songs and other modes of expression? Sorry, how do we balance between songs and other modes of expression are communal and have been part of celebration or commemorative events, yet now we have to speak? Please, can you rephrase this question? I don't think I understand what this person is trying to ask. Pending that time, Jermaine, you can speak now.
Yeah, I think what the participant is kind of asking is, where do we draw the line between celebrating our cultural and creative output versus commercializing it, or rather, you know, exploiting it in a negative sense. So I think from there, you'll definitely know from the community at large that our communities will always keep us in check. So if something is seen as sacred, then you know, there will be uproar and there will be negative comments. So you need to pay attention to what the community you're serving and creating for have to say. And at the same time, as Aibee said, like, creators will always create. So not all art is meant to be commercialized. Not all creativity is meant to be commercialized. You know, you can celebrate something without having to commercialize it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay,
yeah.
you want to say something?
So I think to that question again, I mean, as Charles said, we all want to put bread on the table, right? So when we create because we have to do something, you know, and there's creating because you want to be able to, that your creation is given value. There's, of course, what people deem as when do you start selling your soul? You know, when you're just doing something for the sake of making money, and when you start to lose culture. It comes down to protection of your IP. The value you put in, what is it, why are you creating it? And at the same time is, you know, to meet your sort of your daily living. So there are people who just do creative arts culture because they don't need to earn anything from it. So they do it. And so I do think it's always going to be a question of what is it that you're creating and why are you creating, whether you want to generate revenue from it or you just want it for celebration and entertainment. And you just have to live with it because there you're not going to generate revenue. So there's never, I think, there's never like a one way. I do think there's always like a, you can choose as an artist which way you want to follow. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In the meantime, Aibee is going to be dropping off the call. Thank you so much for your time. Your time is really appreciated, and thank you for obliging us at this time. Thank you really, really much.
So much. Thank you for having me. Apologies.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Aibee. So we'll go ahead with the question. Okay, I'm seeing somebody wants to ask a question. Kevin, would unmute you right away for you to ask your questions. So you can speak now, Kevin.
Oh, hello, everybody. Okay, I have a question.
Please go ahead.
Currently, as I've heard the speakers say the words, I'm from Kenya and I'm so much interested in music distribution and supervision. Find that if you check the music industry in Kenya, it's not that much advanced as compared to the West African or let me say South Africa. So I just wanted to know more, as in how can we do it as creatives who are interested in the music industry in Kenya, as in to match the standards of West Africa and also South Africa. And also, how can we attract investors who are willing to invest in the creative sector? Because we found that most investors right now, or most incubation that are coming to support startups, they're majorly focusing on fintech, ICTs, food processing, textile, and you find that when you sign up for these incubation, they tell that you're in the creative sector. We're not supporting that. I find that for the past 2 years, I've been trying to look for these incubations and these investors, but it's something very difficult. So how can we do it as creatives who have startups in the creative sector that will really love to get investors? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Charles and Mayenkeze, I don't know if you got his question right, or you would like him to rephrase again.
No, I didn't get it, to be honest. Maybe you could make me.
The participant seems to want to know how to get investors for a creative technology sort of startups. Is that correct?
Kevin, is that correct? Kevin, can you speak?
Kevin?
Kevin,
Okay,
is that correct?
I was muted. Okay, what I'm trying to say is that for us who have startups in the creative sector, we find it's difficult to find investors. We find that most of the investors that are willing to support business startups, most of them are in fintech, that is ICT, food processing, textile, and when you pitch your idea, the creative sector one, like for me, I'm in media and entertainment, audio visual, they will tell you that we're not supporting that right now, wait for the next one. And I've been experiencing this now for the past 2 years. Yeah, I've been trying to look for investors for the past 2 years and find that every time they tell, wait for the opening for the creatives for that sector, but there's no, because the incubation or the investors that are coming up there for fintech, food processing, textile, and other sectors. Yeah, the blue economy, you see. So we find it very difficult. So I was asking, how can we attract such investors who are willing to support the creative sector? Yeah.
Thank you very much, Kevin.
So what I would say
Please go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, so what I would say is the best approach is look for startups in Africa or startups that have been recently invested in that are within your domain. So if you can find a media company that's recently been invested in, find out who the VC is. So it needs a targeted approach. My outlook is that if you're a creative economy technology startup, you need to use your customers as your primary investors. Like you said, the appetite in Africa right now is for fintech. So there's no point in going to fintech companies. So there are very few VCs that are targeting the creative industries. And remember, when someone invests in your company, they want to see that you can actually scale. Can your startup actually scale? Right? If it's not possible for it to scale, then the likelihood of you getting investors is very much small. So you have to look at other options such as government grants, bank loans, etc. That's from VCs. I'm not very confident, and looking for investment takes up a lot of time. A recent report came out saying that most entrepreneurs spend 80% of their time looking for investors. I would say rather put that time into serving your community and getting customers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jermaine. I do not know if Mayenkeze wants to add anything, but pending the time, Kevin, are you satisfied or you still need more clarification?
It's okay. If there's any clarification, it's still okay.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. I saw another question in the chat box, and it's from John. He says that I'm almost done with my IP drafting. My question is, which is the best way to do IP evaluation, especially if it's a new idea that valuers may have not interacted with or are not able to estimate its future viability? So I don't know if Mayenkeze can help with this question.
It's quite vague for me, so I'm not sure what he means. I'm almost done with my IP drafting, actually, to be honest. So it's difficult for me to answer that question because I'm not sure what the question is about. So
okay, John, I'm going to unmute you right away. So you just give a brief overview. How far have you gone with drafting your IP, and then what are basic challenges, and why are you asking this question at this time?
Hello, everyone.
Hi, John.
Yes, I'm the one who posted the question, and I'm almost. I said I'm almost done with IP drafting. I meant I'm in the process of legal process between the registering, drafting, compiling the idea, taking it to the legal process, then to registering. So I'm on the legal process now. So my question was, which is the best way to do IP evaluation after registering? And especially when it's a new idea that valuers may have not interacted with, or they are not able to estimate its future viability. That was my question.
Thank you very much, John. So if I get you correctly, you said you're at the verge of completion of drafting your IP and you're presently doing the legal process. And what you're asking is, you want to know how valuable your idea is. Of course, I don't know if we do not know what the idea is, so we cannot really say how valuable the viability of your idea. I don't know if you get me correctly, John.
No.
Okay, what I'm trying to say is you just said to us that you are currently undergoing the legal process of drafting your intellectual property, and of course it's a new idea, right? If I'm correct, it's a new idea, and you have not interacted. You have not interacted with it. You don't know what the future holds for it regarding your idea. You don't know the future viability of the idea at that particular point in time. So you are trying to ask if there is a future for your idea. Is that what you're trying to ask?
My question was, and because when an investor, most of them come, they want to know the viability of the idea. So I'm asking for the benefit of an investor to be convinced that this idea is great and this how much it value. So I'm asking, how do we do valuation, and who is the best way to do valuation on advantage or to investor to be convinced that the idea have future viability?
Okay, so if I get you correctly, what you're trying to say right now is, okay, your idea is still new, and evaluating your idea, right? If it has viability, that way you're asking. Okay, I think Jermaine wants to provide insight into it.
I think you're early to value your idea. So maybe if you can work on some possible projections, if we get 100 customers, 200 customers, 500, 1,000 customers, maybe work on some sort of projections over the next 12 months, because every investor wants to know when they're going to get their money back before they even worry about getting a return of investment. Work aspect of your idea first.
Thank you very much, Jermaine. I would also advise that it would be nice if you can test your ideas, probably do like a pilot so that you can be sure of the viability of your idea, if it's what the market needs at this point in time, and if it's what is going to generate income without not having to just jump straight into valuation when you have not tested what the idea is going to be all about. Okay, I see someone dropped a comment. If you haven't sold, how do you value it? Do you have do you have fans? Do you have waiting customers? So it's a valuable insight to understand that. It would be nice if you can just do a quick test run for you to know the viability of the product that you're about to launch, and if your intellectual property would be useful, and if the valuation is going to be worth the journey. Thank you very much, Joy. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yes, I'm comfortable with that.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, we have 8 minutes to the end of this session, and I want to appreciate everybody for taking our time to attend the Creative Business Seminar Series. If you do have questions, you can still drop your questions, and we can see if we can reach out to you via email, or you can reach out to us via email. So I'll be handing over to my colleague, Toby Lola. Toby Lola will be giving us insight into our upcoming programs and some of the activities that the creative economic practice offers at this point in time that you can benefit from. Thank you very much.
Good morning. So my name is Tobilola. I'm a community manager at the Creative Economy Practice. So I'm just going to share a couple of our announcements with you. So the first thing is the Start with Creative Spaces. So we at the Creative Economy Practice, we offer free desks and event spaces to creatives in Kenya and Nigeria. So if you have any events creative events that you want to host, please come to the Creative Economy Practice at CC Hub. That's in Lagos, Nigeria, and in iHub. So I'm just going to post the link right now so that you can register. So desk spaces and event spaces. So we're giving desk spaces to creatives in Lagos and also creatives in iHub. So you can come and work at our co-working space on the 6th floor in Lagos and Kenya. So this is the link here, and I'm just going to be sharing it with you. And then you can also host your creative events on our rooftop in Lagos at City Hub and the terrace at iHub. So here is the link for desk spaces if you want to apply for desk spaces. And then here's the one for the events. So please click on the link, and I advise that you click on it so that it opens on another browser, because we'll be ending this session in the next 5 minutes. The second, So yes, so Doreen is asking if the recordings will be available. It will be available to you. We're going to send it to your email. So yeah, once it's done, we're just going to send everything to your email. So don't worry about that, Doreen. My second announcement is our Creator Circle. So we usually have a physical networking session for creatives. So we're inviting you, please join us in October, the 3rd week of October. So since you're all in our email community right now, we're going to send you updates when the program starts. So the Creator Circle is basically a networking event for creators. If you're a professional or you're an entrepreneur working in the creative economy, we're inviting you, to just come and unwind. It's usually on Friday evenings, so it's literally an invitation for you to unwind. The program title, we're going to be talking about how to generate PR for your brand, and we're going to be inviting so many interesting and exciting speakers. So once you see the email updates in your inbox, just register, because our registrations usually just are open for a very short amount of time, and we usually have a lot of people who want to come. Yeah. So that's that about the Creator Circle. My third announcement is the group mentoring and business advisory session. So the mentoring session is literally attached to every CBS. So once we have a CBS webinar like this, 5 weeks after, we have a mentoring session, and it's literally very exciting and interesting, because you literally get to talk and ask questions about whatever it is that your business is struggling with. And so we usually bring professionals based on the topic that we're going to be, talking about. And so it's an opportunity for you to be able to ask all the questions that you have. The last time we talked about creating a digital strategy. So if you're a brand, a professional, or an entrepreneur, you need a strategy if you're trying to put yourself out there. And so we had 2 guests talk about it. And so the next one will be in 5 weeks. And so please, we're inviting you. Don't forget, once you see the email updates, just register for it because it's going to be on Zoom, and please attend. So that's all for me. Thank you very much. Over to you, Omalabake.
Thank you very much, Toby. That was very insightful. And I'm sure that everyone that wants to partake from the creative economic practice should look forward to our newsletters and join our Facebook community so that they can get valuable information about the creative economic practice, upcoming programs, and what we do as a practice. Thank you very much to our panelists. Thank you, Jermaine Charles. Thank you, Mayenkeze Baza, for creating time to attend this. And thank you to Aibee in absentia. She had to drop off because she needed to do something. And thanks to everyone that took out to attend this session. Like Toby had said, the recording will be shared with everybody that attended this session, and a feedback form will be shared as soon as the session is over for you to give us your feedback, what we have done well, what we didn't do well, and what you're looking forward to seeing in the next Creative Business Seminar series. A mentorship series is going to come up in 5 weeks from now, and I want to implore that you apply for it, as it's an application-based mentorship program. And if you're shortlisted, please do well to create time to attend the session. Thematic issues of the creative economy will be discussed, and this one will be discussed closely because it's a closely knitted platform for mentor and mentee relationship. So this will be all from our end. I'm sure that the session was quite insightful and you had learned 1 or 2 things with regards monetization of intellectual property in the African creative economy. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you, Mayenkeze. Thank you, Charles. And thanks to everyone who took out time to attend this session. Till we see you again next quarter for another Creative Business series. This is from us to you, saying bye and do have an amazing, amazing day and amazing weekend. Thank you very much.